1980s things grandparents had. If you were lucky enough to spend weekends at your grandparents' house in the 1980s, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Walking through their front door felt like stepping into a time capsule. And honestly, sometimes you wish you could just live there forever, shag carpet and all. So grab a seat, preferably on a plastic-covered sofa, and let's take a little stroll down memory lane, shall we? Furniture that could survive an apocalypse. First off, their couches, built like tanks. I'm talking floral or mustard-colored beasts that weighed approximately the same as a small car. You could jump, flip, spill soda, lose a TV remote for years inside them, and they wouldn't even flinch. Today's furniture could never. Tupperware for days, and none of the lids matched. There was always that one cabinet that, if opened recklessly, would rain a plastic avalanche on you. Bonus points if it included some of that 1970s burnt orange or avocado green Tupperware. Somehow, despite the chaos, Grandma always knew which cracked lid fit which stained container. A giant console TV, that was also furniture. Grandparents in the 80s didn't just have TVs. They had TV monuments. Those wooden console TVs sat like a throne in the living room, complete with rabbit ear antennas wrapped in aluminum foil for better reception, obviously. And when the picture started to roll, a firm smack on the side usually did the trick. High-tech maintenance at its finest. Before we continue, kindly take a moment to hit the subscribe button. Less than 1% of our viewers are subscribed. And by joining the community, you'll encourage us to keep creating videos like this. Thanks for your support. A telephone table and a cord that traveled through the whole house. Remember when phones had cords? And those cords were like 30 feet long, so you could stretch it from the kitchen to the living room while whisper fighting with your best friend? Grandparents had a whole dedicated phone station, sometimes even a tiny wooden telephone chair with a mini table built into the arm. Fancy. Candy dishes you were low-key scared of. There was always a dish of candy sitting somewhere. Crystal bowls filled with rock-hard peppermints, or those strawberry-wrapped candies that tasted like childhood at church. And heaven forbid you take more than one. Grandpa was watching, always watching, with paneling and wallpaper. Everywhere. Every single wall either had wood paneling, because it's warm and cozy, or wallpaper featuring majestic flow explosions. Sometimes both. And let's not forget the matching curtains, tablecloths, and sometimes even furniture covers that screamed, "I am from 1974 and I will never die." The mysterious good towels. Look, you knew better than to touch the good towels hanging perfectly in the bathroom. They weren't for wiping hands, faces, or anything really. They were for show. You'd think you were entering a fancy hotel, except it was just Nana's powder room with that unmistakable potpourri smell. Record players, and 8 tracks that barely worked, right next to the towering stack of Reader's Digest magazines. There was usually a chunky record player, sometimes part of an entire entertainment unit that looked like a spaceship console. If you were really lucky, Grandpa might fire it up and play some Glenn Miller or Elvis. That scratchy, warm sound, nothing else like it. Ceramic knickknacks, and one very fragile "don't touch that area." You couldn't swing a cat without knocking over a porcelain cat, a glass swan, or a tiny collection of Hummel figurines. There was always that one little glass cabinet filled with special stuff that somehow survived decades of grandkids being absolute tornadoes. A freezer full of ice cream sandwiches and mysterious meat. You knew if you played your cards right. Grandpa would hand you a rock-solid ice cream sandwich that took 45 minutes to thaw enough to bite. But you also knew to stay away from the mystery meats buried at the bottom that had been there since the Carter administration. Crochet blankets that weighed 100 pounds. You know the ones, giant multicolored Afghans crocheted with love and yarn that felt like barbed wire. These blankets weren't just cozy, they were battle armor. Once Grandma tucked you in under one of those bad boys, you weren't getting up unless you had a crane or sheer willpower. They were somehow both scratchy and soft, and even if you tried to wiggle free during a Saturday afternoon nap, forget it. You were stuck, buddy. A cabinet full of fancy glassware no one ever used. Every grandparent had one. A massive glass-fronted cabinet filled with goblets, wine glasses, china plates, and crystal punch bowls. It was treated with more reverence than the Mona Lisa. And you just knew if you so much as tapped on that glass or left a fingerprint, a storm of grandma-level side-eye would rain down. The irony? They never, ever used the stuff. It was basically a museum exhibit called The Good Dishes We Might Use If the Queen of England Drops By. A stack of yellow TV guides. Before we had the luxury of streaming TiVo, or even scrolling through a digital guide, we had the TV guide, the sacred scroll of television schedules. Grandparents didn't just get the TV guide. They saved them, sometimes for years. There was a whole strategy to it too. Dog-eared pages, highlighted programs, little notes scribbled in the margins. Matlock new episode. Honestly, some grandparents could have taught college-level classes on TV strategy, all thanks to those little yellow booklets. A calendar from the bank or a local funeral home. Grandparents didn't buy calendars. They collected them, usually for free from the weirdest places imaginable. Banks, funeral homes, auto shops. Whoever handed out a freebie with a picture of kittens, lighthouses, or patriotic bald eagles. And every square inch of that thing was filled with birthdays, doctor's appointments, bridge club meetings, all neatly handwritten in perfect cursive. It was the original Google Calendar, but with more personality and a lot more pressure if you forgot Aunt Edna's birthday. Needlepoint art and bless this house samplers. Every wall in a grandparent's house was legally required, probably, to feature at least one piece of needlepoint art. Cross-stitch masterpieces like Home Sweet Home, God Bless This House, adorned every hallway and living room. It was like their generation's version of inspirational Instagram quotes, except stitched by hand with 40 hours of love and a little bit of passive guilt. An encyclopedia set that took up an entire wall. Before Wikipedia, and even before Encarta CD-ROMs, knowledge was stored the old-fashioned way, in an encyclopedia set that cost a small fortune and took up an entire bookcase. Britannica, World Book, or some random off-brand edition your grandparents got conned into buying from a door-to-door salesman. They looked incredibly impressive, until you realized the moon landing entry was still listed as ongoing exploration, and Pluto was still very much a planet. Plastic on the furniture. You have not known true discomfort until you sat on a sofa sheathed in sticky, crinkly plastic in the middle of July. Grandparents treated their furniture like museum artifacts, protecting it from any sign of human existence. You sat down, and it sounded like you crushed an entire bag of potato chips. Ceramic Christmas trees. If you walked into your grandparents' house in December and didn't see a ceramic Christmas tree lit up in the front window, you probably walked into the wrong house. Those green ceramic trees with tiny, colorful plastic bulbs were pure holiday magic. And woe unto you if you knocked out one of those tiny lights. Reassembling them was an art form only Grandma knew how to master. Even now, if you spot one at an antique store, it's like seeing an old friend. Avon bottles shaped like cars, birds, or cowboy boots. Grandma didn't just order Avon for the face cream. She collected the bizarrely artistic perfume bottles that came with it. The bathroom counter doubled as a parade float of cologne bottles shaped like classic cars, galloping horses, or even a cowboy boot if they were feeling wild. A drawer full of coupons, rubber bands, and pens that didn't work. The infamous junk drawer. No one really knew what lived in there. It was like a portal to another dimension. Half the drawer was coupons that expired during the Carter administration, tangled rubber bands that crumbled if you stretched them too far, dried out pens, twist ties, a mysterious key to absolutely nothing, and a rolled pack of batteries, at least 2 of which were corroded. Need a broken flashlight, a single AA battery, or a pad of paper from 1973. Check the drawer. A radio bigger than a microwave. Grandparents didn't just have radios. They had full-on pieces of furniture that happened to play music. Giant wood panel behemoths with knobs the size of dinner plates. You didn't just turn on the radio. You operated a radio command center. And if Grandpa couldn't tune in to his polka station just right, oh, you heard about it. Laced doilies on every surface. Every table, dresser, and shelf had at least one delicate lace doily. Because how else would you protect your surfaces from air? Dust? No one really knows. All we know is that without them, the house would probably collapse into chaos. Bonus points that the doily itself was holding a bowl of fake fruit, also mandatory.